This week on Previews World Weekly, we take a look inside the new Previews catalog, unpack that first episode of The Mandalorian, and we let it rip in a Previews election debate to find out who is the most presidential comic book character. It's all happening right now on Previews World Weekly.
What's up, Previews World? It's Wednesday. It's New Comic Book Day, Comic Book Day, which means it's time for Previews World Weekly. I'm one of your hosts, Troy Jeffrey Allen.
I'm your other host, Ashton Greenwood.
What's up, Ashton? How's it going?
Not much. I don't have like any cool swanky nicknames because Halloween Comic Fest's over and so is Free Comic Book Day. So I'm here.
I mean, but you're always the Duchess of Free Comic Book Day. You're just Duchess of Free Comic Book Day year round.
Year round. Great. I love that.
There you go. I mean, it's like, it's your official title. It's like, yeah, you're practically royalty. That's how that works.
You're not going to get an argument from me.
Who's this? We got Kevin Burnett saying Ashton rocks.
Yes. Thanks, Kevin. You rock too.
Who did you pay for that? I want to know.
Nothing.
Hey,
maybe I'm just likable.
Okay. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. I'm just revving up for later, Ashton. I'm getting ready for you because we're about to have like a serious debate and it's going to be no holds barred. So I hope you are taking this seriously.
I have like 2 pages worth of notes. So.
Oh, whoa. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm ready for it. By the way, I did not doubt at all that you would be fully prepared for this. So we're going to do an election thing later in the show, but back when we were in the cubes and we're back in the office, we would regularly like just have debates across the cubicles like all the time. Right. And then rope Lance and Carrie into it too. So yeah, I think we're going to have a good old time. But before we dive into that, I did want to point out something that I neglected to mention last week, which is the new catalog is out. It hit the stores last week in late October. And it's cool. We have, for the first time ever, Zenescope is on the cover. And they're pimping their Robin Hood series, the Iron Maiden. I'm actually going to have an interview with Joshua, the writer of that book, later in later in the month. I'll just say later in the month. How about that? No, I'm not going to make any big promises.
No pressure.
No pressure. I'm not going to make any big promises because I'm being a politician today. How about that? So yeah, definitely check that out. That's available at your local comic shop today, right now. Technically, it was available last week too, but that's everything that's going to be available to pre-order now, so that it will be dropping at your shop in January. So you don't want to miss out. There's definitely some cool stuff in there, so definitely check it out. And also shout out to Diamond Select Toys for their Lord of the Rings line, which that was kind of unexpected. I didn't know that was a thing that was happening, but those actually look pretty cool. Diamond Select Toys. Look, I know this is going to sound like I'm like kissing ass, right? But like,
go for it.
Diamond Select Toys has upped their game. Like, I have to give them 100% credit here. Like, their toys as of late have been like pretty phenomenal. So like, just spot on, just like great stuff. So definitely check that out. That's available, the Previews catalog for November at your local comic shop right now. Also, I know it's not really comic book related, but I wanted to point this out. Sean Connery passed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so look, I mean, I know he was up there in ate, like, and
yeah, he's like 90, right?
He was 90, like he was legit 90 years old. But at the same time, like, I don't even know what he passed away from, and I hope it wasn't like COVID related, but you never know. Right. But I just wanted to give a mention to that. I want to give a nod to that. And actually, one of the things that reminded me to mention it on the show is DJ, who participated in the Inktober challenge from last month, did a little art tribute to Sean Connery.
That's incredible.
Which I absolutely love. I love that. Look at that. That is phenomenal.
Talented.
He's super talented. Like, yeah, like talking to DJ, you think he was full of crap all the time, but but it turns out DJ is very talented, and like, hopefully we were going to get him on the show this week so we could talk about Star Wars and the Mandalorian, but hopefully we can get him on the show next week and do that, because this show was just too big to squeeze in another person on the show. What we got here? Stephen Arthur. He be missed. He be missed for sure. I agree with you 100% on that one.
It do be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes. God bless you for saying that, Ashley. I love it. Speaking of Star Wars, you saw Mandalorian, right? You saw the first episode. I actually forgot that they siphoned episodes, because when I watched the Mandalorian originally, I had to go through that whole post I don't like Star Wars phase that I was in before I actually started watching it again.
Right.
I was still in that like salty, like God, what was that last movie called? I can't remember what the last movie was called.
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, I was still in that salty Rise of Skywalker phase when the show actually aired. So I actually got to watch it months later and got to watch it back to back to back. Forgot that they're kind of like siphoning off episodes like 1 week at a time. So Ashton, what did you think of the first episode of The Mandalorian, of Mando?
I felt very tingly. I liked actually that it was very centered on Mando. And like, I mean, we all love Baby Yoda, but like, we don't want to max out on that. And he doesn't really do much at the moment besides like coo and like do the Force, which is cool. Yeah. But it's also like, he doesn't have a lot in way of developing a character just by virtue of the species. So it was nice to get more background on Mando. How much can I say? Because I'm gonna spoil it for everybody.
Well, let's just say it right now. Look, hey guys, we're gonna talk spoilers. Come back in 2 minutes. All right. Don't leave because the show's gonna get really great towards the end, I promise. Or towards the middle. But
maybe mute us.
You were warned. Mute us. There you go. Mute us. Don't close the window. Mute us for a second. All right. All right, let's hear it. What you got? What you got? What you got?
Okay, so initially, like, my dumb ass thought that when the marshal walked into the cantina or whatever in Los Pelagos, I thought that was Boba Fett. Because I'd already heard, my brother had watched it a couple days before me, so I knew, like, there was a Boba Fett situation happening, and I saw the helmet, and I was like, oh my God. But then I, like, saw the rest of him, and I'm like, the clothes aren't quite right. Like, he looks awkward.
Yeah.
He looked, like, awkward in the armor, like, it wasn't natural. And then he took the helmet off, and I was like, okay. You got me. But the one thing I do want to point out is I was getting major Dune vibes from this, and it might just be because it's like in the front of my mind, but like with the Gamorrean guard fight at the battle, they had like the laser shields, which is very present in Dune in the way they battle, and then also of course the Crypt Dragon was like a sandworm straight out of Dune.
Yeah.
But I liked it. It was cool. So what were your thoughts before we get to like the big thing? What were your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was cool. Like I had a moment. I won't talk so much about the episode just yet, but like I have a friend who I've known for years, and we can't talk about anything but Star Wars.
Oh God, I don't know if I like that.
Like, yeah, we could talk about it. We could talk about politics. It doesn't matter what it is, but we can't talk about Star Wars because it always gets heated.
Understandably so.
You know, and that's how it is being a nerd sometimes. You know, so right before the episode aired, or after I watched the episode, we kind of were having an exchange about something unrelated, and then he mentioned Mandalorian, and I was like, "Can we talk about this? Are we mature enough to talk about this?" And it turns out that actually we agree on a lot of things. And the number one thing we agreed on is that Jon Favreau, I think, is the closest thing, and like, you know, with some amendments here and there, to George Lucas that we're going to have in this day and age. And the reason I say that is because he's a filmmaker's filmmaker. And at the end of the day, I feel personally, and like you guys can disagree with me, but I feel that ultimately Star Wars was always more or less, A New Hope specifically, was more or less a tribute to the movies that George Lucas grew up on. Like, you know, the stuff that influenced him, the stuff that he loved. And so in a lot of ways, it was if you came in after the 1977 movie and discovered it, you were kind of getting a film education. And I kind of feel that's what Jon Favreau was doing. And I appreciate it, and I love it for that reason. The other thing we also agreed on is that in Dave Filoni, we trust. Dave Filoni, just give him the whole damn franchise, let him run with it. Like, he takes risks, which are cool, you know, but he also upholds the lore, the mythology of the Star Wars universe, which I also love. So yeah, that's my big takeaway. Like, ultimately, after a season and one episode of Mandalorian, it's like, I gotta be honest, it's currently my favorite Star Wars thing after Empire Strikes Back. And Empire Strikes Back is number one. Yeah. So there you go.
Wow, high praise.
Yeah. And you know where I came from, Ashton. You know where I was, like, I want to say like a year prior. I was not here.
Oh God,
So yeah, let's talk about the really spoilery thing.
The mystery man.
Should I say it? Okay, I guess okay. Johnny, can you throw up the spoiler at the bottom again real quick? Okay, here we go. All right. So, do you think it's Jango Fett or Boba Fett at the end of the episode?
It's 100% Boba Fett. I don't understand how it could be anybody besides Boba Fett. There's no reason for it to be Jango Fett. That feels completely irrelevant. I get it was the same actor that played Jango Fett. I think that's more of like an Easter egg
Yeah.
thing than making it Jango Fett. Jango Fett was never all that important to the story at all, even when he was alive. He didn't do
Well, I
much in
mean,
the
he
prequels.
was important in that, like, he was the clone for all the stormtroopers, but
right, but from like a plot standpoint, like he doesn't contribute anything other than that. Like he doesn't have meaningful interactions with the characters to the point where it would be important to bring him back.
That's
Boba
fair.
Fett, on the other hand. And also, there's the episode from last season after he gets mixed up with all the other Mando gets mixed up with the other bounty hunters on Tatooine, and somebody approaches the body of the dead woman whose name I cannot remember, but like the spurs jangle, which everyone was like, Boba Fett jingles when he comes into the room on Cloud
You're right.
City and Empire. So like, I'm all in. Like, I'm gonna be upset if this isn't Boba Fett.
No, I think it's clearly Boba Fett. Like, hopefully they just don't throw a swerve in for the sake of a swerve.
Yeah.
But I'm very much intrigued by this, and I feel like this is a nice payoff for that goofy moment in Attack of the Clones where he gets his head cut off, and his son, Boba Fett, lifts his helmet up, and I guess his head too. So this is kind of like some nice follow through. So yeah, I'm all for it. I'm actually kind of low key hoping we get Mace Windu at some point. I kind of feel like Sam Jackson's another character was underserved in the prequel trilogy, and I think we can do some more with him. I know you're like, too much Sam Jackson. Sean Arthur Romero. So you think they do a Yoda movie? Should they? I think that would be cool. You don't think so? No, don't do a Yoda movie. Don't do a baby Yoda movie or a Yoda movie.
I don't think Yoda, specifically Yoda centric, would be. I don't know. I'm not interested in something that is like specifically exclusively Yoda centric. For me, like the appeal of Yoda has always been his mastery and the way he interacts with and informs the people around him. So maybe something about the High Council could be cool, and putting him in in a scenario.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Johnny's telling us to move on, so we're going to get off Mandalorian because we'll keep doing this for the rest of the show. All right. So, hey, it's What's the Comic Shop's time. Ashton and I are going to give you our picks this week, and then we're going to highlight some of the big ticket items that are available to your local comic shop today. Let's go. And I want to remind you guys, hey, let us know what you're picking up this week. What's on your pull list? What are you running to the comic shop to get? Let us know. And if you don't know what's available this week, play along. Go to PREVIEWSworld.com/new releases. Everything's listed there except for some DC titles. But everything else is listed there.
Amazing.
So, Ashton, what's your pick this week?
Okay, so the first thing I have to say is there's tons of like awesome stuff out this week. Like I was really
there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I was scrolling through the list and I was like, wow, like I want this, I want that, I want that. Like, so definitely go to your local comic shop. There's a ton of awesome stuff this week.
Yeah.
My pick in particular is Undone by Blood from AFTERSHOCK Comics, which I think I've said this before. AFTERSHOCK has really hit the nail on the head in terms of these like gritty horror takes that are also very modern. And it's also one of the writers on the book is Zach Thompson, who did the Relay book maybe 2 years ago from AFTERSHOCK that I really, really liked. So I'm excited to see what he gets into here. This is basically like a 1970s neo-Western type deal. It centers on this woman, her name's Ethel, who is returning home to Arizona after a number of years seeking vengeance on the man that killed her entire family. And she's kind of navigating towards this town of like eccentric characters and goofy establishments and all of this stuff to try and find him. But as you might expect, it's kind of got a weird underbelly of like depravity and violence. So she'll have to navigate that as well. And sounds like she might kind of give into that. It seems to be an easy pull to just give into the violence of it all. But the thing that really caught my attention here is the entire storyline is underscored by this Old West novel, like, fictional novel within this fictional book. And it follows like a famed gunslinger named Solomon Eaton, like your Billy the Kid type character. And she's using this fictional novel as kind of her roadmap on how to seek vengeance on this man. And her love of fiction starts to inform her choices in the real world, which I think is just a really interesting take on like kind of the hard truths about revenge and how it's way messier in stories. Like movies and books make it so romantic and it just isn't. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in this story.
No, I'm actually, I'm a big fan of revenge stories that don't end in a nice little bow. Like, I mean, yeah, okay, John Wick's cool. It's cool to see John Wick get mad about his dog and like shoot up the place. But I really, really enjoy revenge stories. Maybe not even enjoy. They're just really compelling. Revenge stories where, it's like the character becomes murkier and murkier in terms of like who they are, in terms of personality, in terms of ethics, in terms of morals, as they exact their revenge. So yeah, I'm all for that. I actually might check that out. Also, shout out to Aftershock Comics. They Ruth Ann Thompson came up on the panel last week and did a sit down with us to talk about A Walk Through Hell, which you can catch on YouTube right now, which is also from Aftershock. So definitely check that out. Actually, it's really interesting that you mentioned a book that has a book inside it. And it's about the character being impacted by the book in the real world. There's a book called Crossover out this week that's also kind of like, interestingly enough, that's not my pick this week. And the only reason I didn't pick it this week, because it's definitely one of the books I want to read, is because I want to spotlight something a little smaller that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. And that is Happy Hour #1, which is from AHOY Comics, which is another great smaller publisher. They've been putting out some really cool stuff. I was a big fan of like the Wrong Earth series that they did. That whole crew is just, it's like it's former Vertigo guys coming together to make a home for these type of stories that would have typically been told at Vertigo, and now Vertigo doesn't exist, of course. So Happy Hour, speaking of Vertigo, is from Peter Milligan, who of course did Shade the Changing Man. He did Ecstatics for Marvel. He also did a book, I Love Britannia, and this is the first issue, and it takes place in a future America where you have to be happy. It's the law. And if you're not happy, the joy police will come and beat the snot out of you. And so the concept here is that like two young people go on the run to go be peacefully melancholy and depressed. They just want to get away from this forcibly happy utopia, right? And so it's kind of like oh God, what was that what was the Tobey Maguire movie? Was it Pleasantville? I think it was Pleasantville. I think that's what it was called. It kind of reminds me of that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Truman Show, where they're trying to get out of the bubble that is supposed to be like this perfect reality, so that they can experience like the range of human emotion. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's Peter Milligan. The cover, which was the thing that got my attention immediately, is an attention grabber for sure.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out. Other thing I like about a Happy Hour, or like about AHOY Comics, is they include extras, prose, pictures, poems, and more. So definitely check that out. That's available right now from AHOY Comics. All right, big ticket items. Let's do it. Speaking of Star Wars, I'm surprised. I had you pegged to pick this week, so I didn't want to like
overload on the Star Wars, because there's going to be a lot of Star Wars in the election thing, and we were doing Mando.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. But Star Wars Adventures: Shadow of Vader's Castle. This actually was a free comic book day title, or was it a Halloween Comic Fest title, like a year ago?
Yeah, it was a Halloween Comic Fest title.
Yeah. And so it's kind of cool. It's like they kind of take this this haunted house approach with Vader's Castle, and like you're getting all these different perspectives about the legendary Sith himself, Darth Vader, which is actually pretty cool. What else is available this week? Crossover. This is cool. I'm actually really into this, and I kind of feel this is actually a love letter to comics, which is something that I have accused Donny Cates of being for a long time, as a lover of comics, which I think is appropriate.
Why is that an accusation?
Well, I'm just joking, but like, I think that's appropriate considering the fact that he writes comics, right? And like you kind of get a really good understanding when you read his book. You really get the feeling like this guy really enjoys comic books. Like, you know what I mean? And so Crossover is kind of this idea that like we joke about the superhero crossover, right? But what happens when those events bleed into the real world? You know what I mean? So like all the other details beyond that are being like kept tight to the chest, but I'm really curious to see what this is, because I feel like it's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe very similar to 1984, which is a Mark Millar book that came out a few years ago. What else we got this week? Stranger Things D&D, the crossover. Speaking of crossovers, right? This is a new number 1 by Jim Zub and Jody Houser. We should have a Stranger Things D&D interview later this week, so definitely keep an eye on that, because Jody Houser, she's going to expand on how these two worlds came together for this comic, and also she's going to give us an idea of like what character fits what D&D role. You know what I mean? So who's the chaotic neutral and all that jazz. So definitely check that out. I don't know anything about D&D, so I'm just talking on my butt. TMNT Jenica Volume 2 #1. So Jenica burst onto the scene officially this past a few months ago on the TMNT books, and so now the character's proven to be so popular that they're going to go ahead and delve into her own series again. And this go round, the TMNT universe is experiencing an influx of mutants. They even have a place called Mutant Town, and so I think Jenica is going to factor into this weird hub of New York City that's populated by mutated creatures. So it should be interesting. What else we got, Johnny? Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood. I'm actually very curious about this. First of all, the artist lineup is actually pretty great. But if you're familiar, I hate to do this. I don't want to compare it to a DC book, right? But I'm gonna do it anyway. If you're familiar with the Batman Black and White series, it's kind of the same idea, but with the blood.
Love that.
So yeah, if you're a fan of like the movie Logan, you probably want to pick this up because it looks like this is going to be Wolverine uncut, and it's got Adam Kubert, who I'm a huge fan of, always have been. My first real love of Wolverine comics was from Adam Kubert, so I'm looking forward to seeing how gory he gets in this Wolverine book. This number 1. What else we got? Mighty Morphin number 1. So Boom is releasing 2 Mighty Morphin Power Ranger books in the next 2 weeks, and this is the first one, and then the next one is going to be Power Rangers number 1, and they're going to run parallel to each other, and they both involve Lord Draken kind of becoming the savior of these 2 teams, but one team is very much opposed to him. So definitely keep an eye on that, and I got an inkling that there will be an interview for that on PREVIEWSworld soon as well. Finally, Year Zero, Volume 2, Number 1. This is a zombie series, art by Mike Deodato. I'm sorry, yeah, I take that back. Not Mike Deodato, he did the cover. It's Benjamin Percy and Juan Jose Rip. Let me tell you something. Juan Jose Rip, like, his artwork is phenomenal. Like, you talk about detailed. You talk about just like crazy. Like, this guy, you want to read this book just to look at the artwork, especially on a zombie book. Like, he's absolutely perfect for this. And this is from Artists, Writers, and Artisans. So definitely check that out, especially like zombie books. So you're going through Walking Dead, going through that Walking Dead withdrawal, right? There you go. Here's a book for you. Check it out. Actually, I know that the next issue of the Walking Dead Deluxe color edition is also out this week too. So there you go. Some more Walking Dead for you. You can revisit that. All right. Trailer time. Something else is coming out this week is a book called Maybe Someday from A Wave Blue World. So we're going to show you guys a trailer, and when we come back, it'll be
we're going to yell at each other.
Yes. Let's do it. And that is Maybe Someday from A Wave Blue World, and that's in comic shops today. Definitely check that out. It's like cool, especially if you've been to like books that are more like high fantasy and whatnot. But hey, now I'm wearing a blazer, so it's about to get real. And Ashton's also wearing a black blazer. This is how you know it's about to get 100% real. So, ladies and gentlemen, Nerdcision, at least that's what I'm calling it, 2020. Let's geek out the vote. It's time for Election 2020 PREVIEWSworld Edition.
Good afternoon, America. My name is Johnny Rose, and I will be your moderator for this presidential debate between PREVIEWSworld and Free Comic Book Day. On Twitter over the last week, we asked you, the people, who from the world of comic books should oversee this great nation. From Marvel Comics, we have Princess Leia Organa. From Boom Studios, Malcolm Reynolds and Buffy Summers. From IDW Publishing, Optimus Prime and Duke. And from Image Comics, Rick Grimes and Negan. We will be going over how you voted and highlight some of our favorite comments. We also encourage you to send us your comments during this live stream, showing your support or disdain for the presented nominees. Now allow me to introduce our candidates. First, he's asking you to vote like your multiverse depends on it. Consumer marketing pundit for PREVIEWSworld, Troy Jeffrey Allen.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much for having me here.
And his opponent, promising a chicken for every pot and a comic book in every home, is the Duchess of Free Comic Book Day, Ashton Greenwood.
Thank you for your time, Johnny. Let's get into it.
Welcome to both of you. Now, to give you an idea of how this is going to run, each candidate will have 30 seconds uninterrupted to defend their nominees, after which the opposing party will have a chance to respond. We will go through each of our voting matchups, continuing until we reach our current and final voting poll. And with that, let's jump right into our first poll that we ran, which was Princess Leia against Darth Vader. We'll start with Miss Greenwood. Why does Leia deserve to be our next president?
Well, look, Leia is a natural-born leader. She's raised by a senator, and she's easily the most reasonable character in the entire Star Wars universe. Darth Vader, on the other hand, is a tyrant. He's a dictator. He rules by fear. Evidenced by a force choke that he's done on more than one occasions to people that work for him. And he's also really into servitude, evidenced by building 2 Death Stars at the hands of human death and suffering. Is that the kind of leader we want when we can have a reasonable, compassionate, compelling young woman?
Thank you for your time. Now, Mr. Allen, Lord Vader promises order throughout the galaxy, but he is a known perpetrator responsible for the destruction of civilizations throughout the galaxy. Defend Darth Vader for president.
Johnny, first of all, show me a civilization that he's defended. Find me one. Find one. What has he destroyed? Let me know. Okay? Like, here's the thing. I support the military, Jonathan.
Alderaan?
Where is it? Where is Alderaan?
It's gone because he blew it up.
That's hearsay. Regardless, I support the military, Jonathan. That's why I wear this shield button. I want a strong military and not a bunch of rebels who hide in caves, utilizing primitive backwater planets to fight their wars for them. Vader is about jobs. The number of people that were needed to create not just 1, but 2 Death Stars created millions of new jobs, and as a result, brought some much needed economy to the galaxy. We have a saying where I come from, Jonathan. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, it must be a Jedi mind trick. They don't call it a Sith mind trick for a reason.
Compelling argument from the both of you. Well, let's see what our audience said on Twitter. Mary McKenna said, she's a princess who was raised to rule. She's served in the Senate, done diplomatic missions, and served in the military. Darth Vader has killed people. Doesn't seem that hard of a choice. And Aaron Shiro also said, doesn't seem like a hard choice. Vader is nothing but hate, rage, and emo on a leash to the most evil Sith Lord. Leia is good and kind and will kick evil's ass while rallying all to her cause and ruling in justice and hope like her mother. Now, regardless of the fact that the Alderaan votes were deemed invalid for this election,
Imagine that.
The final votes are Leia for president wins in this round at 72.4% with 341 votes coming in. So congratulations to Miss Greenwood on that victory.
It's a sad day for comicdom.
I'm sorry, but that's the way democracy works. Next up, from Boom Studios, we have Malcolm Reynolds, Captain of the Serenity, and Buffy Summers, Vampire Slayer. Now, Mr. Allen, you sided with Buffy Summers. Defend your position.
It boils down to one simple fact, Jonathan. Buffy Summers is a natural-born leader. As a matter of fact, she is the chosen one of this generation. She's been chosen to be a leader. An issue that I know is important to many comic book reading voters right now is LGBTQ plus rights. And her vice president is a lesbian witch. And look, I know you guys are going to bring up vampires, but that's just intolerant speaking. Let's be honest here. You want to bring up people's previous relationships. Let's talk about Mal. He sleeps with companions. That's on the record. Is that what you want, America? Is that what you want, really?
Well, perhaps. Well, let's hear what Ms. Greenwood has to say. Your response in defense of Buffy Summers.
Malcolm Reynolds.
Malcolm Reynolds. I apologize. Malcolm Reynolds.
So Malcolm Reynolds is all about loyalty to his crew. He cares about his people. He said a number of times, you mess with my crew, you mess with me. That is a man that cares about his constituency, that will do whatever it takes. He's persuasive, a good communicator. He's a good negotiator. All the things that it takes to lead a nation. And he might be sleeping with his companions, but at least they're all on the same side, whereas Buffy is colluding with the enemy, and that's not intolerance. That is enemy activity.
He cares for his crew members, Miss Greenwood. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Jane releases his tell-all book. Look, if 2020 is the end times, which a lot of people think it is, who would you rather have you lead you through the apocalypse? Buffy has defeated several apocalypses. Mm-hmm. The apocalypse is here, and America will beat Buffy Summers.
Compelling arguments from both of you. Let's take a look and see what our audience said on Twitter. Walter Knox says, Buffy, because she can at least last longer than a season. Harsh but true words there. Shadowstar said, if the apocalypse comes, beat me. Well, I hope that someone has Buffy's number on speed dial because it's already here. Eliza Bliss just replied with a gif of Buffy, apparently showing her support for Miss Summers. Jenny Stivan said, oh, come on. Literally 2 of my top 5. Having said that, and with much love to Mal, maybe he gets VP or Secretary of Defense, hashtag Buffy for President.
There you go.
Julio Ursat says, I love Mal, but his fiscal policy would be terrible. He can barely keep Serenity in the sky. And we all know he'd be removed from office after only 1 year.
Uh-huh.
What's next? Major Fanboy 2 said, I don't know, he usually aims to misbehave, but then later, once it came time to cast his vote, definitely Mal, I aim to misbehave.
Love that.
Engage Guy, I'd vote for Mal of Firefly too. Now, this was the closest poll that we had, and while it seems that Buffy won the popular vote, the Browncoats united in the electoral vote, and the final results are Mal coming out on top. And
that is upsettingly close.
Wow.
Squeaking out a victory. Like we said, this was the closest contest that we had in this election. Mal Reynolds coming out with 53.8% of the vote with 312 votes coming in. Now, next up is round 3, which is Optimus Prime, leader of the Transformers, and Duke, a real American hero. Miss Greenwood, please defend your nomination of Optimus Prime.
Okay. Well, with Optimus Prime, he, being a robot, is less geared towards more emotion, more geared towards logic. So we would be able to kind of push past some of those emotionally charged issues and get through things in a more logical way that makes sense and is fair to everybody. Also, with the use of their energon power, we can have clean energy for all Americans. Shout out to fixing climate change. And finally, to sum it up, Optimus Prime said it best. Freedom is a right of all sentient beings. And that is it.
Well, compelling argument. Mr. Allen, your response in defense of Duke for president.
Well, first of all, Jonathan, he is tough on drugs. I mean, that's just a statement of fact. If anyone who's watched G.I. Joe Extreme in the 90s, he's very tough on drugs. Now, here's a big thing that I think is the absolute final hammer in the terms of this debate, which is he's been combating a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world since the 80s. Now, some would argue that G.I. Joe has been fighting Cobra this long because both are terrible at aiming and shooting, but that's just a theory. Most importantly, the G.I. Joe theme song. You can hear it right now, can't you, Jonathan? Yes, you can.
I can indeed. Now that you've said that and put that earworm into my head, I'm also got a couple G.I. Joe PSAs running in the back of my head as well.
There you go. And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe.
Should we be relying on military to fix all of our issues? You can't always fix everything with might. We need some diplomacy.
I mean, he's been very diplomatic, I think Duke has. There was that time that he kicked Falcon out of the G.I. Joes because he was on drugs. But I mean, he also let him back in when he fixed his life. So I think that he's shown compassion when it matters.
Compassion or weakness?
I don't think it's weak to show compassion for someone who's had a drug addiction.
All right. Well, we're not going to get into the personal drug addiction of people's family members or anything like that. But let's take a look at what our audience said on Twitter. The Real Jedi Mom said, Duke's always in a coma. He can't lead that way.
Dang.
Valiant Watch said, doesn't Duke win by default as the only American in this equation? That's a good argument there. Mm-hmm. Jolene from the Black Lagoon. Extremely funny that this is the Optimus Prime who annexed Earth without allowing humanity to have any say in the matter.
Well, there you go.
Creepy Magnus saying Prime for president till all are one. Elijah saying Optimus Prime was literally made to be a leader, so I say Prime. Unwary Coin, Optimus Prime, of course. And Mirthagar Mantis at Mirth Mantis says Optimus would need a good vice president given he'd inevitably die.
We don't need that in negativity.
All compelling arguments on both sides, but to paraphrase Optimus Prime, let's roll out the final results, which are Optimus Prime wins 77.2% of the vote and 145 votes counted in there. Now, last but not least, perhaps the most brutal choice of our election, Image Comics, Rick Grimes versus Negan from The Walking Dead. Mr. Allen, please defend your choice of Rick Grimes for president.
I mean, look, he's sacrificed so much for this country. When he said that he wanted to lend a hand, he literally gave us a hand. Also, look, Negan hates Asians. Let's be honest here. That's my time.
Okay.
Didn't see that coming.
Did not, but anyway, thank you very much. Ms. Greenwood, Negan's running mate for vice president, Lucille, is simply a baseball bat with barbed wire. So one might question his sanity. What's your defense of Negan for president?
Well, in terms of Negan and Lucille, I think Teddy Roosevelt said it best. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Also, Negan is incredibly charismatic. He's into decisive action, and he's a strategist. And let's face it, he's more of a man than Rick is. Literally, he has all of his limbs.
Oh, that hurts.
This is the type of lowbrow, dirty tactics that I would expect from Miss Greenwood and her associates.
Right,
and I'm okay with that.
All right, well, let's keep the mudslinging to a minimum. But the final results on this are: Rick for president wins 77.2% with only 127 votes coming in, counting this
Wise
poll.
decision.
Whatever.
Now, unfortunately, voter turnout was not that good, especially the Walker vote, which ended up not being counted because they were a little slow getting to cast their votes and didn't arrive in time before the polls closed.
I think this is why helped Negan. Negan's more into killing people than walkers, so.
It seems so, but Rick wins in that one. But moving on to our secondary debates, we now have Malcolm Reynolds against Leia Organa. Now, Miss Greenwood, both are war heroes, but what makes Leia a better choice over Captain Reynolds?
Okay, well, as one of our followers pointed out previously, Malcolm Reynolds always aims to misbehave. Leia is more logical. Like I said, she's the most reasonable person in the Star Wars universe. And above anything else, she's the most resilient, able to keep going after her entire planet is ruthlessly destroyed. Plus, she's very well groomed. Her hair always looks great. And we don't want a stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder running our country.
Wow. Who's scruffy looking?
Those are fighting words. Mr. Allen, your response in defense of Malcolm Reynolds.
Actually, one sec. I'm just trying to see whose check cleared, the Alliance or the Independents. Oh, the Independents. Okay, cool. The Unification War is an ironic name given how divided the verse is these days, but I want comic book fans to remember who was on the front lines. Malcolm Reynolds. He fought as a brown coat, but now he fights for us all. He fights for love. And to quote him directly, love keeps America, paraphrasing, in the air when she ought to fall down. Tells you she's hurting before she's keen. Makes her a home, and that's a direct quote. Don't stop the signal. Vote Mal.
Excellent argument, sir. Now, the final votes are in, and we have Leia for president eking out a vote, or eking out the win, 71.7% out of 226 votes counted. Obviously, the force was strong with Leia's constituents.
Hokey religion.
She's a natural-born leader.
Yeah. Well, next up is Grimes versus Prime. Rick Grimes against Optimus Prime. Now, for this contest, in the interest of playing devil's advocate, we're going to switch it up a bit, and we're going to have you argue for a nominee that was initially your opponent's choice. So, Ms. Greenwood, how can Rick Grimes defend us when he's had known failures against Negan in the Sanctuary in the past and has lost so many of his trusted advisors along the way?
Sure. Well, failure is a natural part of the human experience. You know, it shows that you're learning and growing, and the key word there really being human experience. Optimus Prime is a robot, so how can he know what humanity actually wants? And beyond that, my opponent, Mr. Allen, has sat on this show for a number of weeks and said that he is adamantly against robots and doesn't trust them. So how can he argue for them now?
I'm against robots made by humans, not robots from Cybertron. Let's be very clear about that.
What is the difference?
One's from Earth and the other one's from Cybertron.
That actually brings up a good point now, Mr. Allen. Optimus Prime has fought for what seems like an eternity against the Decepticons, who continue to pose a threat in their quest for Energon. Now, what can Prime do to combat the Energon crisis?
Well, it's simple, Jonathan. He's got the touch. He's got the power. When all hell's breaking loose, he'll be riding the eye of the storm. And he's got the heart. He's got the motion. And he's got to know that when things get too tough, he's got the touch.
And some say that he also has the power. Let's see what our Twitter audience had to say. Major Fanboy 2 saying, my next vote goes to Optimus Prime because I believe in what he says. Freedom is a right for all sentient beings, reflecting a message that Miss Ashton Greenwood stated earlier. Scarpetti said, not even a challenge, Optimus Prime forever. So now for this contest, voters really turned out in the battleground state of Cybertron because the final results are Optimus Prime for president, 76.7% with 146 votes coming in. Now, we are getting down to the wire. We have our final two contestants. We also must make sure that we give a nod to our independent candidates as nominated by our Twitter followers. Mike Pellerito, my non-biased suggestion, Archie Andrews. James said, this guy, indicating Cobra Commander.
That seems like a mistake.
And Bear Rorschach said, Rorschach for Prez. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now have our final two candidates for President of the United States. I give you Leia Organa and Optimus Prime. All right, now, Ms. Greenwood, we're coming to a close now, so please present your closing argument in favor of Princess Leia as president.
So, as I've stated before, Princess Leia is incredibly resilient. She's able to come back from things after her home planet was destroyed and lead an ultimately successful rebellion to topple the tyrannical empire. So she would be successful in leading us all. Beyond that, she can relate to people. Robots cannot relate to people. They don't know what humans need. And, Optimus Prime showed up to Earth, annexed it without anybody's, consent, and brought all of his problems with him. The Decepticons were right on his heels. So we don't need more problems. We have enough of our own, and we need someone that can fix those, i.e. Leia.
Compelling argument. Mr. Allen, please present your closing argument in favor of Optimus Prime as president.
Johnny, I'm going to use a tactic from A Time to Kill that Matthew McConaughey used. And so ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to think back to 1986, to when Optimus Prime died. That feeling of a child losing their hero. Now open them. It's 2020. Optimus is still here because you believed in him, because you refused to let him perish. And this time, there is no Linkin Park song to end this story. The story continues in the pages of IDW because of you. Now all I ask is you keep that feeling alive and roll out to Twitter and vote for President Prime.
Are you playing dramatic music?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps up our presidential debate between Free Comic Book Day and Previews World. Now, we want to make sure that everyone knows these votes have now just being released. So you can now go to @PreviewsWorld.com or @PreviewsWorld on Twitter to vote for who you'd like to have as president, Leia Organa or Optimus Prime. Now, obviously, this poll just opened, so we obviously do not have a clear-cut winner, as we must wait until all absentee and mail-in ballots are accounted for. Now, it's still early, so make your voice heard. Voting is still open, so please go to @PreviewsWorld or Free Comic Book Day on Twitter to make sure you cast your vote. And each of our nominees, it can be found in comic books that you can pick up at your friendly local comic shop. To find one near you, visit comicshoplocator.com. Now, as we close out this debate, we ask you to share, like, and most importantly, subscribe to Previews World and Free Comic Book Day on all their social media platforms. Thank you, and good night.
I got hot from being serious.
Yeah, I actually thought I was gonna like end up sweating to death in this jacket, but I'm actually okay, which is weird because it's cold outside. It doesn't make any sense. Thank you, Johnny, very much for hosting that debate, that lively debate. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna use this opportunity to let people know that, like, hey, you did a good thing, right? You voted, and that's important. And I mean that IRL. And I also mean that for Previews World, the
Right.
Previews World election as well. So shout out to you and thanks for participating. On that note, I think we're almost done with today's show. Ashton, what is the comic shop shout out for this week?
This week's comic shop shout out goes to Comics Northridge Hidden Level Games in Ontario, Canada. And this comes from OJ Costello. And if you want to have us shout out your local comic shop on the show, find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, tag your shop, and also use the hashtag #SupportYourLCS. We will find them, we will shout them out because we love all comic book shops and we want to give them all love.
All right. And I want to remind people, again, check out A Walk Through Hell, our episode of The Panel, where we focus on the Garth Ennis series. It's just a fun conversation between me, myself, not just me, myself. Between myself, Ruth Ann Thompson, right, for an hour. It's like Smeagol. It's like, yes,
I want that
now. Yes, I'm sorry. The panel is hosted by Anna Mia, and it has me. It has Ruth Ann Thompson from AFTERSHOCK Comics. It also has Matt Kopecki from Third Eye Comics, and it's a cool discussion. Like, we kind of really get into the nitty-gritty about what we love about Garth Ennis, what we don't necessarily love about Garth Ennis, and why A Walk Through Hell embodies all the best things about Garth Ennis. So definitely check that out. Also, I want to let people know, like, in a couple of weeks, we're gonna have an X-Men roundtable. It's gonna be me again. The one of the members of Three Black Geeks. It's going to be Scarrett from Comics Horizon, and my buddy, who is a X-Men encyclopedia, Psy, the Mutant Master, we like to call him. He's going to be joining us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the year that was Dawn of X and the events of House of X, Powers of X, and the outcome of Ten of Swords. So definitely check that out. That's available in a couple of weeks. So definitely keep an eye out on our feed on Previews World's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. for updates on that as well. And that's it for Previews World Weekly, guys. Ashton, that was fun. I like that.
I know. I feel like I've been through something, but I had so much fun. I was not expecting to be so serious about it.
The problem was I was trying to keep a straight face while reciting lines from Transformers the movie, and it just at one point I just stumbled through it, but I was like, you know what? We're going to keep this going. I'm not an actor. I'm just a guy who pretends to host a YouTube show. So there you go. There you guys. That's it for Previews World Weekly. I've been one of your hosts, Troy Jeffrey Allen.
I'm Ashton Greenwood.
And we'll catch you at the spinner rack.
Don't forget that you can catch Previews World Weekly streaming live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific at Previews World on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.